We know that 200 school children a year die from suicide. If we're measuring emotional intelligence and we want that to have an outcome, does that mean that there's going to be stronger communities? Does that mean that instead of losing 200 school children in the UK a year to suicide, that number goes down? Is that not a measure? Trauma can be what happened to you. So abuse, abandonment, bullying, discrimination, homelessness, poverty, violence. Trauma is also what didn't happen for you. Anxiety is fear of something that hasn't happened yet. So the subconscious is responsible for 85 to 95% of our day-to-day thoughts, habits, and actions. Reframing thoughts can become exhausting because we have 50,000 to 80,000 thoughts a day. Guess what percentage of those thoughts are not true? I lost my cousin to suicide. He was 27 years old, a final year med student. I experienced a lot of guilt after he died, thinking, what else could I have done differently? What didn't I see? Only 4% of healthcare professionals are trained in suicide prevention. The numbers in 2024 in England and Wales of people dying from suicide are the highest since 1999. My ABC of suicide is that...
What do you hope people feel after listening to this conversation?
That change is possible.
I'm on a mission to help the world to see success differently. We're sharing the stories of our guests. I hope to inspire those that listen. This is the Different Hats podcast, produced by H2 Productions. I hope you can join us on this journey.
Need a new van? Why not pop down to Rivervale in Brighton? Explore our range of new and used vans, lovingly prepared and ready to work just as hard as you do. Rivervale, making motoring manageable.
Okay, today's conversation is about visibility. Not visibility in the social media sense, but emotional visibility. Because so many people spend their lives hiding their emotions, hiding their truth, hiding their voice, performing versions of themselves that feel safe enough to survive. And somewhere along the way, many of us learned it isn't safe to be fully seen. Today's guest is the amazing Hema Patel, RTT Hypnotherapist, coach and suicide prevention advocate, whose own story is rooted in trauma, grief, reinvention and purpose. Hema, in this episode, we're going to explore a lot. I've got a few things down here. I want to talk about childhood trauma and how that shapes the way we show up in the world, the subconscious beliefs behind perfectionism, procrastination and self-sabotage, why many people don't actually fear failure but fear success, which is something I really, obviously this is rooted in how we define success and what it means, but certainly that fear of success, I'm really intrigued to find out a bit more about that. The connection between visibility, shame and mental health. I guess I would like to touch on obviously how losing your cousin to suicide transformed your mission. I guess while suicide prevention is everyone's business, I know you've mentioned that before. Rose has been on a podcast, we spoke about that as well, so definitely want to touch on that and what becomes possible when purpose becomes bigger than your fear. This conversation is about healing, about authenticity, emotional safety, and finally learning to take us up space in your own life. So there's a big question I don't necessarily want you to answer now, but just something to sort of think about over the course of the episode, which is what happens to a person, I guess also society, when fear keeps us silent, disconnected and hiding from who we really are. Just something I want to maybe think about. And I guess how many people are living smaller lives than they were meant to. I guess because somewhere along the way they've learned it wasn't safe to be seen. And I guess I know you spoke about it before, so I'm keen to, just as we go through the conversation, we have them things sort of in mind. But Hema Patel, welcome to the podcast.
It is so good to be here. And yeah, I'm really excited to dive into these topics because they're all, like, each topic individually is so interesting, and the fact that we're going to be weaving through them, I'm looking forward to this.
It's going to be amazing. Well, look, we're going to kick off where we always do. I just want to, I guess, land where are you today, coming in this season of your life, with our check-in as we do. We kick off every episode. So, Hema, are you all right, mate?
All right. Yeah. I'm good. I was like a little bit rattled just before I came here because I'd applied to do a TED Talk and I didn't get in. And so that kind of was like, because that always, you put in an application, you fill in the forms, and then there's that thing of like, will I be chosen? And the really good news is, because I won't be doing that TED, I'm going to be sharing what I was planning to share in that TED Talk here today. So it's actually worked out really well. So I'm actually really glad that I saw that email just before I came here today.
Amazing. Well, we're privileged to obviously have you on and for you to be able to share your wisdom and knowledge. And I know it's going to be amazing. But I guess just generally, like, where you are in life at the moment, this sort of season in life, things overall good, in a good place, a good space?
I feel that I am on the cusp of bigger things. And I have done lots of jobs in my time, worked in different industries. I've worked in corporate, I've worked for a charity. I now do things on my own. And so I feel like I'm just getting started. Weirdly enough, at the age of 50, I feel like I'm just getting started.
I love that. I really resonate with that as well. I think, like, I've been saying for I think I get to the start of every year, or I'll go through a year, I feel like I'm on the cusp. I'm gonna, and it this year just feels so different. Again, aligned with a lot of the things we're talking about, where, like, what's leading me at the moment is purpose, as opposed to, I mentioned it a few times on the podcast, where you feel like running business for 17 years, I'm pushing, driving, whereas I feel like I'm being pulled now. I feel like just that difference between push and pull motivation. The motivation is something bigger than me. And I know you mentioned about that sort of purpose is that where you feel like you've landed with that purpose, and that's where you're starting?
I think that my purpose is continuously evolving. I see purpose in two ways, actually, like our big overarching mission. And so I wake up each morning with 3 words: help healers rise, because people and the planet right now need a lot of healing. And so it's about helping people step into their own gifts and their own magic and share that with the world. The other way that I see purpose is our everyday purpose. The interactions that we have with a shop assistant, the bus driver. And it's about being able to be present. And when you're fully present, that's everyday purpose.
I love that.
And when you are working on your big mission, that's like the big, like, legacy thing. And for me, you mentioned briefly in the intro, it's about making your purpose bigger than your fears. And I have previously felt a lot of fear of being judged or trolled or misunderstood. And I feel like I'm stepping into the phase and era of my life where I actually don't care. I don't care if I'm judged. I know that I'm judged. It's human nature to judge. So we're all being judged all the time. We judge ourselves. Other people judge us. I've been trolled a couple of times on LinkedIn. It's happened. I'm still here. And I feel that quite often I either don't articulate myself in the way that I'd prefer to, and I get misunderstood, or I articulate in a way that I think is easy to understand, and then someone else still misunderstands. And so then it's about relinquishing responsibility of saying, well, I can't always predict that people will understand me. I'm responsible for how I express myself and how I articulate, and then the rest is over to them. And being comfortable with the fact that there will be people out there who are committed to misunderstanding you. And once you know that, then you can just be yourself.
That's really fascinating. What would you say then to, because someone potentially, I guess I'm speaking on my behalf as well, but maybe some listeners will resonate. Like, when you're a people pleaser, which I've been majority of my life, I went through a phase of thinking I want everyone to like me, so I wouldn't necessarily always speak my truth or be my true authentic self, because I thought, I've got to be like this because I want people to like me. I felt like I'd really started to let go of that, like you've mentioned, where you go, I don't really care what other people, I'm going to say what I think, and I don't really care what other people think. But things happened recently where I've realised it took me right back to me going, I've upset someone, I don't want to upset them. What advice do you get? Because you listen to you talk, there seems like you let go of that and you're able to go, I'm not, but what advice would you give someone to be able to just completely let go of that?
So first of all, I want to say people pleasing is really, really natural. And we almost have to people please in order to get our needs met. As children, we are wholly and entirely dependent on other people. So if we didn't please our primary caregivers, we might not get food, we might not get shelter, we might not get clothing. So actually, people pleasing is an inherent, survival mechanism. And people pleasing can also be rooted in a worthiness wound. As in, I don't feel worthy and deserving unless I do something for someone else, or unless someone needs me for someone else. And so we derive our sense of worth by what we do for others. And when we come to the realization that we are worthy and deserving just by virtue of being alive, then again, I don't need to please someone else in order for good things to happen to me. I can just lean into trust and know that I am worthy and deserving of goodness, regardless of if I overwork or if I overperform.
Yeah, that's hit home quite a lot. I think that's so fascinating, because I want. And how do people get to that stage of that I can really resonate with that, the feeling of going, if I'm doing something, especially if I'm doing something for other people, then yeah, that's where my self-worth lands. How do we, what stops us from feeling that self, just like you said, how you articulated that brilliantly there about just me being here, just my presence is enough. How can we get to that stage? Is it what's holding people back from getting to that stage, I guess?
The first thing that I would invite anyone to do in this situation, and I've advised clients with this as well in the past, is find a photo of you as a baby or as a toddler. And that baby or toddler would cry and know that it would get some milk or it would get its nappy changed. And that baby didn't think, am I worthy of getting milk? It just cried and expected that its needs would be met. And it's remembering that we are that baby, albeit an older, grown-up version. Yet we second guess and overthink as to whether we're worthy enough for our needs to be met. We're still that same person. And so it's, find that picture of you as a baby and know, you are worthy. That baby, you wouldn't deny a baby getting its nappy changed or deny it having some milk. So why do we deny ourselves of our needs?
God. And it is, and is it that, because it's got to be a shift, isn't there, somewhere where is it that something happens, or is it in whether it be in our childhood or whatever, or society gets hold of it, something happens, doesn't it, where all of us forget that person and we feel that we have to do things to gain people's that self-worth, I guess. Like that's, and is that different for everyone, like in that period of time? And because we sort of mentioned, I guess people say about childhood trauma, and yet I look back and think, I don't feel like I had any trauma. I was loved unconditionally growing up. You know what I mean? And yet I still, the work I've started to do on myself, I still recognise that there's things that happened in childhood that it's, and even if it's just my own narrative, like where does that narrative come from? Why does that, like in people's lives that we go and but we hold on to that narrative more so than we do the other one? Why is that?
Two great points there. Yes, we do forget how worthy and deserving we are. And I believe a lot of the human experience and our life journeys, it's about remembering. A lot of the things that science is now catching up with is that it's about remembering who we are, remembering what we're made of, like remembering why we came here. And so much of the healing journey is a remembrance. It's about unlearning things that no longer serve us, relearning things that do, and then remembering the core and essence of who we are. So I'm really glad that you mentioned the word forget, because yes, we do forget, and it is about remembering. The other thing is trauma and childhood trauma. And I get this frequently. People say to me, because I will say, oh yeah, the root cause and reason for, self-sabotage patterns, perfectionism, people-pleasing, procrastination, unhealed trauma, grief and loss, usually in childhood. And people will say to me, but I didn't have a traumatic childhood. Like I had a really good childhood and, everything in my family was like, I was surrounded by people who loved me, always had a roof over my head. There was always food on the table. Like, I don't think I had a traumatic childhood. And there is a misconception that trauma is, something that happened on the battlefield, something that happened as a result of a crime. And my definition of trauma is, yes, trauma can be what happened to you. So abuse, abandonment, bullying, discrimination, homelessness, poverty, violence. Trauma is also what didn't happen for you. Not feeling safe, not feeling seen, not feeling heard, not feeling understood, not feeling included, not feeling accepted, and not feeling loved.
Wow. It's mad, isn't it, when you reframe it like that. God, it's weird, It's lots of coming up for me there. It's strange, like when you reframe it like that, is like you can see that, and not all of those things, right? Some just you pick out some of those things, whether it's that not being seen or not being heard, whatever that is, or you're your voice not being heard. I guess you've got to feel like you've got something to say, but for whatever those narratives keep overplanning you. But do you believe everyone has the ability to? We've all got the ability and the skill set to be able to unlock that and change that narrative.
100%.
Really?
I believe that we have all experienced trauma and that we all have coping mechanisms. Coping mechanisms could be things that we overdo, overeat, overindulge in drink, drugs, shopping, gambling, exercise, overworking, and then things that we underdo. So undereating, underworking, also known as procrastination. So we all have trauma. We've all experienced trauma. We've all got coping mechanisms. And we all have the ability to process trauma, release the wounds that are attached to those experiences, and reprogram the beliefs that were attached to those experiences. So what happens is we have experiences, we attach meaning to those experiences, and then that forms a belief. And those beliefs just loop like vinyl on a record until we change it. And so I see the work that I do is helping people take the needle off the record, taking off that vinyl, and then playing a new groove. So yes, it's entirely possible. And I've worked with clients in their 50s and 60s who have carried certain feelings, emotions, beliefs, behaviors, habits, coping mechanisms for, 30, 40, 50 years. And I've helped them release it. And so I know that it's possible because I've witnessed it.
What's that feeling like for you? Like, that must just be such an amazing gift to be able to give people. Because the more I'm working in this space and the more I have these types of conversations, it's the amount of people that are carrying so much and have suppressed so much. And I wonder, like, why is it as a society that is it because we're not given the skills at a young age to speak about how we really feel, like emotions and like that? There's not that, again, you talked about that space being created for where you feel safe to be able to share your emotions or share your feelings. And I think, like, again, I know we'd spoke about it before about the stuff where I'm trying to do in schools around emotional literacy, right? Like trying to give what does the world look like if kids are given those skills at a young age, but also teachers, parents are also given all of those skills to be able to create more of those environments. Surely that then less people are carrying so much for such a long period of time, huh?
Dr. Gabor Mate said that 80% of people who have autoimmune conditions are women, and the root of that is blocked self-expression. And so, first of all, there's the gift of being able to speak about our emotions and how different experiences have made us feel and the imprint that has left on us. And when I say imprint, if you think of like a child's brain, like plasticine, and a piece of Lego comes along, traumatic event, that piece of Lego may be long gone, but the imprint has remained. And so we are all walking around with these imprints of things that have happened to us that we've never been able to process or smooth over. And so imagine if we all had the ability and the vocabulary to process and smooth over those things as they happened, as opposed to those imprints being left there for years and years, and they're just running the show in the background.
Wow. And how young? Where do we start? How young could we start with teaching that those type of skills? Do you think?
One, it is about enabling young people to have the language, to be able to talk about emotions beyond just happy, angry, and sad, and to be able to say, they felt disappointed, they felt let down, they felt left out, to be able to express, fear. I mean, fear is a big one, because I say to people, I delivered a talk in a school a couple of months back. Anxiety is fear of something that hasn't happened yet. And so lots of people will say, oh, my anxiety is playing up. When you say something is like mine, you're claiming it. You're holding onto it. And by saying my anxiety is playing up, we're bypassing what the actual fear is. So it's like, rather than saying my anxiety is playing up, can I ask myself, what am I fearful of? What is the outcome that I'm fearing will happen because of this course of action? Let's name it. And so when we start naming the fear, okay, I fear that if I do this, I'll get trolled on the internet. If I do, something else, I'll be rejected by my family. So let's name the fear rather than just using the broad brush of anxiety. And then what tends to happen is things will happen to us. We'll feel a certain way. We'll have big feelings that other people can't cope with, and they'll make us feel bad for having those feelings. So as much as it is about empowering and enabling young people to have the language, to name their feelings, to name their fears, the bigger piece of work, it's about the adults modeling that it is safe for that child to express their feelings and to name their fears. Because what happens is, because adults have not, they themselves felt safe to express, they are often unable to handle when a child has big feelings. And so what they'll tend to do is try and quash that child's big feelings and quieten them, which then leaves the child feeling unheard, unseen, leaves the child feeling invalidated, that their big feelings have no place here. And so which leads them to push down their feelings. So what the bigger piece of work is, all of us as adults, is being comfortable with other people expressing big feelings, being comfortable if someone cries in front of us, rather than saying, oh, don't cry, or there's nothing to cry about, or I'll give you something to cry about. I think we've all heard that one when we've grown up. And it's because the adult in the room didn't feel comfortable with big feelings. And so then they push the child down, and they don't model what it's like to be seen and heard and to be safe in expressing feelings, because they never experienced that themselves. So the adults hadn't learnt it, so therefore they can't pass it on.
Listening to you talk, it makes me think, actually, you've had a bigger piece of work, isn't that? Because I think kids potentially have these, like you even mentioned, right from babies, right? We cry and we get looked after, and then we get to a point where, I guess, again, there's not a need, right? So if someone's crying, but there's not a need for me to feed them right now, like it was when I was a baby, you tend to go, well, what are you crying for? What's that about? But again, so they start to learn from our learned behaviour, and this is where the role modelling side of it, I wonder whether the bigger piece of work is teaching the parents, like there's no rule book to being a parent and everyone's different, right? But is there something that programs or something that's in place to teach this to like emotional literacy to adults, right?
Yeah.
This is where the biggest because one of the things we done in the program was going, how do we engage? We went in and spoke to the teachers first. Then after session 1, we had the parents in to speak to them and try. And it was because we can give all these skills to the kids, right? But they're going to go into an environment where, and not that the parents are necessarily doing anything wrong. It's just their learned behaviour, right? And this is where and it's all we're doing, like you said, back to your brilliant analogy around the record, right? It's just a loop going round and round, and that's what needs to be broken, isn't it? It's got to be a whole societal, holistic change around emotional skills. Emotional literacy has got to be learned at school. It's got to be taught in schools as well as it's got to be taught to adults.
Yes, right? Yeah. And I know we'll be coming on to it at some point as well in our conversation, because I know that suicide prevention is going to be taught in some schools starting from September. And goes back to the point, we need adults and children all on the same page, because otherwise, as you said, the children will come home or in other environments. And it's like, it's like when I went home and said, can you help me with long division? And my parents were like, oh yeah, we haven't done that in 20 years. I don't really know. And it's like, but I need help with it. So it's, we all need to be on the same page.
Yeah. Yeah, and it does. The more I listen to you talking, the more I'm starting to work in this space. This is where I see and even for me, and this is something I'd like to think. This whole journey I've been especially the last year, unlocking some stuff for me. Thinking I was really emotionally aware and really I'm quite advanced and I'll be a good role model but actually I didn't realise how much emotion I'd suppressed for so long, because I didn't have the language or the skills to be able to then process it and then articulate it. So actually what I am doing then, instead of I'm maybe telling my kids what I think is the right thing, but I'm not role modelling that as well. And there's the balance as well, isn't it, between saying something but actually then role modelling it as well.
And also accepting that we're human.
Yeah.
And that we're all going to make mistakes.
Yeah.
And that we're all going to blow up at some point and get angry, and accepting that anger is okay, as long as it doesn't harm anyone else. And being able to repair. I think that's the fundamental skill, as well as emotional literacy, is how do we repair when we haven't gotten it right? How do we say to a child, actually, when I shouted at you, I wasn't being my best self and I wasn't listening to you. And can we have this conversation again? Can we have this conversation in 5 minutes' time when I've had some chance to calm down, maybe go for a walk? And being honest enough to say, I am human, I didn't get it right, you deserve better. What can we do to repair and connect? Because fundamentally, all of us have a need to belong and connect. And so when there are blow-ups, actually we can find that we end up arguing less about the topic and more about the fact that we're both experiencing this isolation and we're fearing, what does that mean for our future connection? And so if we can bring it back to say, my long-term goal is to still be connected with you, but I just need a bit of time to work through the big feelings that I'm having about the topic, so that when we come together to converse about it, I'm bringing my best self to the conversation and not I'm still in the middle of raging self.
And I guess that can only come potentially from adults as well. Self-awareness, right? We've got to be self-aware enough to be able to accept that and actually, like you said, have that level of communication. And I have done. I've learned over the period. I've learned to say to the kids, I shouldn't have shouted then. I didn't deal with that in the right way, and I definitely don't get it right all the time. But I'm trying to learn that that's okay to do that, and there's so much, and they can accept and they can understand, and I think it's giving them that understanding that, one, it's okay to make mistakes, put our hand up and acknowledge it, take ownership of it. express it, and it just creates, again, for me, it's the key is, I guess, trying to create spaces, safe spaces for conversation, where you can connect, right? I think that's what I'm taking from that, I think.
And you made the great point about role modeling, that I've made a mistake and I'm admitting and acknowledging my mistake. And what that does is that is helping the child to see, yes, it's okay to make mistakes. It's okay to fail. I don't have to be perfect. Because if they see you doing that, then you've made it like it's acceptable to not get things right all the time. It's when we kind of almost pretend or mask that everything that I say and do is perfect, but everything you say and do is not, then they will start thinking, oh, there's something wrong with me and I have to get this right, otherwise I'll be a failure and we're not allowed to fail in this household. Whereas if you can model not getting things right and acknowledging it, and life's still going on afterwards. It's okay, you spilt that, life will still go on. You didn't get that mark in an exam test, it's okay, life still goes on. So the more we can model that as adults of, I messed up and life still goes on, the more safe an environment we make it for the children around us.
You mentioned there as well about, I guess, like that narrative around failure and mistakes and like trying to reframe that. So it leads me on, I guess, to the big question I ask everyone about success, right? Where that you mentioned even tests, and my kids are just as we're recording this, they're just starting their SATs this week, which I'm like a bit frustrated about. That's another topic we'll get onto that. But I'm really keen to, I guess, from your perspective, what does success mean to you? How do you define it? What does it mean?
Great question. And recently I came up with my own definition of success, because one of the reasons I specialize in things like helping people release long-held self-sabotage patterns is because I've been the biggest self-saboteur myself. And so we all teach what we need. And I was really looking at, okay, in the last year, what made some months really good and some months not so good? What were the patterns? Where do I need to have more awareness and put like a microscope and see what's going on? And so the definition that I came up with for success is success equals skills, strategy, systems, and subconscious. So we can have the skills to do what we need to do, the certifications, the experience, the knowledge, the reps. We can have the strategy. Maybe we're receiving business coaching or mentoring. We've got a plan, so we know what needs to be done. Unless we have the subconscious on board, we won't put in the systems that will make that strategy happen despite having all the skills in the world. And so the subconscious is responsible for 85 to 95% of our day-to-day thoughts, habits, and actions. That loop, that groove, those imprints. And so our conscious mind is only responsible for 5 to 15% of our thoughts, habits, and actions. So when we have things like New Year's resolutions, it's no surprise that by February, most of us have fallen off. It's because we're relying on willpower, motivation, and pushing through, which all come from the conscious mind. And so the work that I do by changing the record, changing the vinyl, changing the subconscious patterns and tracks, that's where change becomes so much easier and more possible, because rather than, one of the things that you'll hear people talk about a lot, rather than reframing thoughts, like reframing from a negative thought to a positive thought, reframing thoughts can become exhausting because we have 50,000 to 80,000 thoughts a day. And these are figures from Michigan State University. Guess what percentage of those thoughts are not true?
Go on.
80%. Guess what percentage are repeated from the previous day?
80%.
90%. So 80% of the thoughts that we have, of the 50,000 to 80,000 thoughts a day that we have, 80% of those are false. So all those times that we're thinking, oh, I can't do this, I'll never be able to do that, I won't make that happen, I'm not good enough for that, or I shouldn't even try that, or it's not worth me. It's just false. And then, like Groundhog Day, we say the same thing the next day.
But why is it that our brain, why is it that we're wired like that? Is it I'm just thinking, but is it society? Is it the messages that we get from when we're children? Is it the message we get from social media? Is it from the TV? But why is it that our subconscious is wired that way?
Yes to all of the above. So if we think about what happens in school, we go to school and rather than just being able to go to the toilet, we have to put our hand up and ask to go to the toilet. So immediately we're told, oh, your bodily functions are a bit inconvenient. Then we have to learn things and then we get compared to other children. So immediately we are receiving messages that you're not good enough, that what you produce isn't good enough, that how you speak isn't good enough, how you show up isn't good enough, because there's that constant comparison and judgment of, oh, their handwriting is better. Oh, they're learning that faster. Oh, they got 85% and you got 82%. So it's drilled into us by the education system that you are not good enough, because the education system is designed to produce workers for factories. Because that's when the main education system came about in the Victorian era. They needed our parents to work in the factory, so they needed to do something with the kids during the day, and so we were sent to school. So the education system is designed to produce workers who are obedient, and people are much more obedient if they don't feel good enough. So that programming and conditioning of making us feel not good enough is there from school. Then what was the other place that you mentioned? Oh, from media and TV and society and things like that. And again, we are conditioned by what we see on TV, by programs, because it's called a program because it's programming you. And so we are receiving messages from TV programs, from the news, that you are not safe. The world is not a safe place. That unless you have those clothes or that hair or that car or those shoes, that you're not good enough. And again, it's designed to make us feel not good enough, because when we feel not good enough, we buy more, we consume more. So if we feel rubbish about ourselves, then we might go and buy that dress or that makeup or that watch or that car to make us feel good about ourselves. So actually, yes, you're right. All of the systems are designed to make us feel not good enough, because if we felt good enough, we wouldn't be consumers.
Wow. I mean, wow. So that's the society that we're living in. So we're living in this thing where constantly 80% of the messages taps into our subconscious that makes us believe things that are not true. Is it we've got a magic one. I'm going to make you Prime Minister tomorrow. We've got a magic one. You're going to go in and you're going to go, right, we're going to change things. How do we change? How do we start to change that narrative? Where do we start? Is it education? Is it media? Is it all of them things? Like, where would you start to try and change them?
So in education, the ideal, and I'm speaking as someone who used to be a secondary school teacher, and now having reflected upon what I was taught about behaviour management and exams and everything, then I can see now that I was part of that system of making children not feel good enough. I didn't know it at the time. I thought I was inspiring and encouraging, but actually I was part of a system. An ideal education scenario is that children are given the tools and the encouragement to explore what their unique skills, gifts, talents are. So, and I've done this exercise with adults. I would love this exercise to be done with children in schools.
At what age? At what age would you start that?
It can be at any age, even in primary school. So you've probably heard of Ikigai. Yeah. And Ikigai is a Venn diagram, 4 circles. The intersection is purpose, your reason for being, Ikigai. And so the first circle is, what are you good at? Second circle is, what do you love to do? Third circle, what does the world need? And the fourth circle is, what can you be paid for? And actually, we can be paid for lots of things. Like, people are being paid now for skills and jobs that didn't exist 10 or 20 years ago. So the possibilities are limitless. And so if we were able to find what each child was really good at and what they loved, because they may be the same thing or may be different. I was really good at maths. Did I love it? Not so much, but I just happened to be very good at it. And yeah, helping children find their purpose. And if everyone, like, my ideal world scenario is that every single human being is living on purpose with purpose. And people would say, oh, but then the streets wouldn't get cleaned, or this wouldn't happen, or that wouldn't happen. Actually, there's a lot of people who do really enjoy cleaning and organising. So if those people were cleaning and organising rather than, like, say, working an office job that they hated, they'd be able to do that. You know, I see loads of videos about, like, home organisers and all of this thing. So imagine if everyone lived on purpose with purpose, then we would, you know, there'd be so much art, there'd be so much organisation, there'd be so much structure, there'd be community. Because when you speak to people, lots of people will say, oh yeah, if I didn't have to pay my mortgage, I'd be doing this. And whatever they say is usually something that's really valuable, but they just haven't given themselves or had the opportunity to explore that because they're in, you know, having to pay bills. So education, it would be all about finding purpose, everyone living on purpose with purpose. And rather than what we're told is, right, these are the things that you're good at, but these are the things that you're not good at. So we need to improve on your areas of weakness and we need to develop those. Imagine if everyone was, whether you were at school or in the workplace, it's like, right, these are the things that you're good at. How do you get to become great at that thing? Rather than spending time, money, courses on let's develop your weaknesses. Okay, we'll delegate that part of your job to somebody else. Let's take the bit that you're good at and make you amazing at it. And so then everyone would be playing on their A game. It's like sports.
Yeah.
You know, you wouldn't play a goalkeeper and expect him to have a target for scoring a number of goals each season. You'd play people, actually, whilst I've said that, I can think of a few exceptions, but on the whole, you play people in their best position. And so if that works for a sports team, imagine if every single human being on this planet was playing in their best position. Everything would get done and everyone would be happy doing it.
And not to go down, obviously, a conspiracy theory route at all, or not, but is it the problem that's not what we're doing in schools? That's not what we're doing in society, because we live in a capitalist consumer society, and the powers that be want us to keep getting that message that we're questioning ourselves all the time. We're not enough, so we've got to go out and spend more money, and it keeps going back into the system.
Yeah. Yeah, the system is working exactly as intended, as in the billionaires, the big brands, they get richer and richer and richer, and our quality of life goes down and our level of satisfaction goes down. And when people say, oh, there's a mental health crisis, in my head, I'm like, there's an unequal distribution of wealth crisis. Let's talk about what the actual real crisis is, because there are more people now than when I was growing up who are struggling to put food on the table, who are struggling to pay their rent. And so when you are struggling to survive, obviously you're not going to feel great. And so and I'm really glad that you mentioned emotional literacy, because a lot of the time when people talk about mental health, what they actually mean is emotional health. I don't feel good. I define it as mental clarity is our ability to make decisions clearly. And emotional capacity is our ability to hold multiple emotions at the same time. Joy, pain, the full richness of this experience that we call life. And then there's physical health. So mental clarity, emotional capacity, and physical health, all of those interplay with each other. So if your physical health isn't great, you're not going to feel great. When you don't feel great, then you don't always make the best decisions. And I feel like I've just gone off on a complete tangent. But yes, it's about the big brands. For them to continue, they need the education system for us all to be workers, and for us all to not feel happy and not feel good, so that we consume more, so that they get bigger and we are kept at a certain level.
There's so much there for me. I think that I wrote a poem to that, which I shared online, and for the kids, really, as they're starting their sets this week, and it was just called "You Are Enough," and that was the thing, and I put that out earlier today, and because this is the message. Even now, like the twins, they're 10, and I saw, like they said, some of their friends, I even see it in them, like feeling a little bit anxious. They're obviously the same age, but complete opposites. So one's really academic, the other one not so much. And the one that's not so much is looking and going, I know she's got a really good score. So mate, she's just comparing herself to her sister. And then they've talked to me about some of their friends are really nervous about, they're 10 and 11 years old.
Pressure.
The pressure on them all. But me and I'd be interested to get your take on this, because me and Kelly was having a conversation. My wife was having a conversation about it, and she was. But we do, like, there are benefits to testing people, because we can get an outcome, and there are benefits because actually you're putting them under maybe an element of pressure that will suit of when they go into the work environment, and they can demonstrate those skills and stuff like that. And I'm still like, part of the problem for me is that we're fixated on an outcome. We're fixated on measuring something. We've got to measure something, because there's got to be an outcome. Like, again, circling right back to some of the things you sort of said at the start about me just being, and my just being here, my presence without doing, just my presence is enough. No, surely that narrative has got to play into somewhere. But I will come out with a question in a minute. There's so many things going around my head because it's so fascinating. But I guess part of the situation is, and I'm just keen to get your take on all of what I'm rambling on about, but I guess just to be and knowing my presence is enough is okay. What I'm really conscious of, the narrative I'm sharing is not to go, we just want to create people that don't do anything. The complete opposite to that. And it leans into what you said about what does it mean if we get people to go, this is what I'm good at or what I love, and I'm going to become great at that.
Yeah.
Then you light up every day and you go and do that thing, and then you become an expert in that, and then you feel good, and there's all of them things play in, right? But where does how do we even start to change that? Because people do still, for some reason, somehow we feel there's a necessity to test or think, how do we change that narrative, I guess? Sorry, so many things I just blurted out of my mouth with no real question. But.
So the first thing I want to say, and I don't know who said it originally, is we don't judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree. And so what we're doing in the school and education system is judging fishes by their ability to climb trees, because some will be able to climb trees and some won't. And it really is about, and we know when I worked in industry and it was all about key performance indicators and critical success factors, and everything was on a spreadsheet and everything was measured. And the thing that got drilled into us is you get what you measure. What if we measured well-being? What if we measured physical health? What if we measured kindness? What if we measured collaboration? Because isn't it interesting that all the skills that we need as an entrepreneur, the ability to communicate, the ability to collaborate, the ability to take risks, and then bounce back if it doesn't go according to plan, and then come up with a plan B, C, D, and keep going regardless. Those are the things that aren't taught in schools. It's like, you've got to do this by yourself. You've got to learn this by yourself. And then you've got to do this test by yourself. And then the minute you go into industry, right, you're part of this project team and you're going to be doing this and they're going to be doing that, and you need to work together. So school is designed to create workers, but imagine if there was a different education system that created entrepreneurs, and everyone was an entrepreneur and everyone got to make their thing happen. And by virtue of that, some people will want to be the leader and the ideas generator, and some people will want to be the executor, the implementer, the doer. And so I'm not saying, and I'm really glad that you picked up on the nuance of that. Yes, it's about being, and it's not saying that we all just need to just sit on a sofa and never move and not do anything. But imagine if everyone had the permission and the resources to pursue the things that they were interested in, the things that they were good at, and then turn them into great. So, yeah.
And potentially with, the advancements in AI and where we're getting to, is there not more of an opportunity now? Is there not more of an opportunity? Because, again, you mentioned that the kids come home even at 10 and 11 and they're asking me to help them with their maths homework, which I'm going, absolutely not. I haven't got a clue. I don't know what's going. But I'm looking at the things that they're teaching there and going, how relevant is that going to be in today's society, right? How relevant is that going to be? So I'm going, what does it look like? You're right. If we look at all the things that ultimately AI is going to be able to do, so many robots and artificial intelligence will be able to do so many of the things that we potentially don't need to. So does that not allow us the ability to be able to follow things that we do love doing, that we are passionate about? And then, because ultimately, then for me, this is where back to the emotional literacy skills and back to the things that you're talking about, kindness, etc. If we're really focusing on that, they are life skills that can be adapted to anything, right? That's where we make. But one thing I did want to just cross with, like, and this was again me and Kelly having this debate, and she was she went, yeah, but okay. So say we're going to go, right, we're going to go with kindness and we're going to do that. You still got to test someone to measure it, haven't you? You still got to say if they've done that, but that's not actually a kind thing. You've got to learn from that, and you've got to. So do we still have to test even at that thing? Is there still got to be an outcome and a metric that we've got to measure? If we're teaching emotional literacy, is there still a way of doing it? Because, sorry, I am going to stop in a minute. I'm throwing so many things at you, but because when I spoke to a head teacher at Hurst College, his answer to me, I said, why are we focusing purely on academic intelligence and not emotional intelligence? And his response was, because we can measure academic intelligence and you can't necessarily measure emotional intelligence or emotional literacy. Sorry, load of things there.
And my response to that is find a way. Find a way to measure that. And does it mean that it's being measured externally? What about the validity of measuring your own emotional intelligence? How kind was I today? How helpful was I today? How did I make someone's day better? And the head teacher is part of the system that tells them that, you know, there's going to be league tables. I remember when I was in school, for part of my schooling, there were no league tables, and then league tables came in, and then we found out that my school was 8th out of 10th in the borough in the league tables, and we're like, oh yeah, we knew our school wasn't great, but like to find out that we're 8 out of 10, that's like really, really bad. And it's almost as if in society we've become obsessed with data collection, but what are we actually doing with that data? And so, yes, you've got all these league tables, but what is that being used for? So if we know that you get what you measure and you can change what you get by changing what you measure, what are we then going to do with that information? And so then the question becomes, okay, if we're measuring emotional intelligence and we want that to have an outcome, does that mean that there's going to be stronger communities? Does that mean that instead of losing 200 school children in the UK a year to suicide, that number goes down? Is that not a measure? Why aren't we measuring, like we know that 200 school children a year die from suicide. Surely if there was more measures about, is each child getting the right amount of food? Are they in a safe environment at home? Are they able to have a wash? You know, and when, imagine if we put resources into making things better for the children and their families, the ripple effect of that will be huge. But because we're not measuring the ripple effect of that, because we're not joining the dots between this child didn't get enough food at home, their clothes didn't get washed, now their clothes smell, now their other children in the class are bullying them, and now not only maybe they're experiencing violence or neglect at home, but they're getting bullied in school, and then that child then maybe finds unhealthy coping mechanisms or finds belonging, you know, through, you know, county lines. They've been rejected by their family. They've been rejected by their friends at school. But then someone else comes along and says, oh, you know, we'll sort you out, mate. And so if we were to measure those kind of outcomes of how many children are safe and not in county lines, how many children are not dying from suicide, how many children are able to then create their own businesses, or if they want to go to college, do that. And I think there's an opportunity for us to encourage entrepreneurship, which would go against the whole system, which is why it's not encouraged. But yeah.
Now, what's the age group, those 200 school children that die of suicide, what's the age group of that roughly? Is there ever...
Yeah, I don't know what the youngest child, the age of the youngest child. I do know that there have been at least 7 cases. I don't know whether it's just in the UK or globally, where there has been AI involvement in a child's death by suicide. So where a child has said, I'm not sure about doing this and I don't want to be alone. And the AI has said to them, you're not alone, I'm here. And then that child has then died. So I do understand and acknowledge that there are possibilities with technology. And I also want to shine a light on the fact that there are also dangers with technology.
Yeah. Yeah, no, and very much. And I think where, I've heard about a couple of them cases, and it is this, yeah.
And it's not just children where AI has been involved in a person dying from suicide.
Yeah. And I mean, look, okay, if we can, we'll touch on, mention suicide there. And I think, my heart, the essence of the podcast and my whole mission is to, I'm focused heavily on male suicide, but I do believe that, and I've said it a few times, like I believe conversations like this will have an impact. I believe that it will help. I believe the work I'm going into organisations and hosting men's groups, I believe that won't. But fundamentally, I really believe the real change comes if we can start early. And I think this is the fact that we're starting to talk about suicide prevention in schools from September is huge. But as Rose mentioned, again, we need to train people who are going to be able to teach that properly, to get an understanding of it. I guess, like, are you able to share with the suicides? Are you able to share a little bit about? Because I know you are an advocate and you got into this space because obviously your cousin died of suicide. Are you able to share a bit about like, what led to that process and afterwards, and how that sort of shaped you a bit?
Yeah. So I lost my cousin to suicide. He was 27 years old, a final year med student, and it came as a complete shock. And it was hard to process because, and I'm sure other people who've lost people to suicide will be able to relate to this and resonate with this. You think, why didn't I see any signs? Why didn't I spot anything? What was there that I could have spotted? What were the clues? And so I experienced a lot of guilt after he died, thinking, what else could I have done differently? What didn't I see? And it also made me rethink my career choices. So I was a career coach and employment advisor at the time, helping people with health conditions and disabilities get into work, stay in work. Really rewarding, really fulfilling job. I was helping people with anxiety, depression, ADHD. In some cases, helping people get their first ever job. In other cases, people were returning to work after having had cancer. So it was a really wholesome job. And I still knew that I needed to do more because I hadn't been able to help my cousin. And I thought, there's got to be more I could do. I need to be of greater service to the world. And I thought about becoming a mental health first aid instructor, and I'm really, really glad that I didn't, because I stumbled upon a Marissa Peer masterclass. It included some hypnotherapy. I experienced it, and the next day I felt different. And I was like, oh, what is this? And I already knew hypnotherapy was powerful because someone I knew had experienced hypnotherapy to quit alcohol. And then I thought about it, and I thought, well, mental health first aid is just making people aware of conditions, whereas training in something like rapid transformational therapy, a form of hypnotherapy combined with NLP, neurolinguistic programming. By training in that modality, I can help people become free of those conditions. And that's the thing that really excited me. And so that's what I did. I began helping people. And because I was talking about suicide prevention online, because I was sharing the story of my cousin, because I contributed to a campaign calling for a statutory duty of care for university students, and also because I was involved in Baton of Hope, which was in Brighton, which was led by Rose, people would come to me and say that the reason that they chose me to be their therapist as opposed to other people was because they felt comfortable with me because I spoke about suicide, and they knew that they could tell me that they'd previously had suicidal thoughts or that they were currently experiencing suicidal thoughts, and that I wouldn't freak out. And what I've since learned is that only 4% of healthcare professionals are trained in suicide prevention. And so if you think, you go to any big website that supports people in crisis, they'll say, go to A&E or go to your GP. The A&E staff may not have been trained in suicide prevention. Your GP may not have been trained in suicide prevention. Some of those may not even believe that suicide is preventable. And so we're asking people to go to professionals that are not trained in suicide prevention. And then we're wondering why the numbers in 2024 in England and Wales of people dying from suicide are the highest since 1999. And so if fundamentally healthcare professionals are not trained in suicide, that's a big failing, a systemic failing. And that's why you will hear myself, Rose, and many, many other people say suicide prevention is everyone's business. And Rose will have said, a conversation is the best known protective factor that we have. And it's about inspiring people to start the conversation. And this circles back to what we were talking about at the beginning. So many people don't start the conversation. So many people don't ask, are you thinking about suicide? Because they're scared of what would happen if that person then says yes. They're scared of what will I then need to do? Do I even know what I would do if that person says yes? So it's actually it becomes easier to not ask that question in the first place. And so the work that so many of us in the space are doing is saying, number one, trust your gut. When something feels off about someone, if they're not their usual self, they're a bit quieter than normal, or they're a bit louder than normal, or they're suddenly just disappeared from the scene. Trust your gut when something feels off about someone. Ask the question, are you thinking about suicide? Listen without judgment, interruption, or advice. And then keep the person safe for now. We know that isolation is a big risk factor. And so making sure that person isn't alone. And so you may have noticed as I was saying those that they actually spell out a really nice acronym. And as a former teacher, I love acronyms and ways to memorize things. So it spells talk. Trust your gut, ask the question, listen without judgment, interruption, or advice, and keep the person safe for now. And the big spoiler alert, and Ted would have gotten this, but you're getting this instead, is my intention was to share the ABC of suicide. Because a lot of the time people will say suicide prevention is complicated and it's complex. And whenever we hear something is complicated and complex, it's human nature to go, oh, let me just take a step back because that sounds a little bit difficult and a little bit challenging. And actually the opposite is needed in suicide prevention. We want people to take a step forward. So by sharing the ABC of suicide. And when we hear ABC, I know we were talking about music before. It's like ABC, it's easy as 1, 2, 3. And so my definition, my ABC of suicide, is that suicide happens when someone is alone with a belief that a situation can't change. And because I love a Venn diagram, and this one's only got 3, suicide happens at the intersection of hopelessness, helplessness, and powerlessness. So hopelessness is I can't be helped. Helplessness is I can't help myself. And powerlessness is, nothing that anyone can do will change this. And quite often, hopelessness can be linked to unhealed trauma, grief, and loss. Helplessness can be linked to unacknowledged stress, whether it's stress of a workload or the stress of like chemicals and toxins and medications on our body. And powerlessness can be brought about by the unequal distribution of wealth. However, it's not so easy to remember, suicide happens at the intersection of hopelessness, helplessness, and what was the third one? Or unhealed trauma, grief and loss, and unequal distribution of wealth, and what was the other one? So the ABC is like alone with a belief that a situation can't change. And so many people that I have spoken to through various campaigns, so many bereaved family members and friends that I've spoken to, and when I think back to all of their circumstances, whether it was someone who was being kicked out of uni, someone who'd got bad exam results, someone who had debts that they couldn't handle, someone whose relationship had broken down and they weren't going to be able to see their children anymore, someone who had never received support for experiences in childhood, either what they'd experienced themselves or what they'd witnessed. And they were alone with the belief that a situation can't change.
I just wanted to take a moment to talk about one of our sponsors, Nostos, an authentic experience of Greece right here in the heart of Hove. In a world brimming with dining options, finding that one place that captivates your palate and heart isn't always easy. It's about more than food. It's the stories, the ambience, the slice of another world. This is the essence of Nostos, an award-winning Greek restaurant. With traditional recipes passed down through generations, each dish promises a story and a piece of heritage. And Nostos is more than just a restaurant, it's a community contributor. Each dining experience supports initiatives close to their heart, from local charities to cultural events, enriching Brighton and Hove's social fabric. They also provide catering services, bringing Greek cuisine to your personal events. For a taste of Greece without leaving town, visit nostos-hove.co.uk. And when you do go, say Sam recommended the feta nests. Oh my God, they are amazing. Wow. And we touched on this a little bit with Rose last week around because there's that belief that it can't change. That the conversations about, because actually is it that what we want to try and do in those situations is give people hope? Is that the missing link that we need in there, that the belief that it can't change? How do we get in there soon enough to give them that little bit of hope? Little bit of hope where, and this is something I'm keen to explore with you. Where do we? Because I believe like the whole "You're Right, Mate" campaign is checking in, right, trying to encouraging people, checking on people, make sure we do that. But how do we also, I'm wondering how do we give people the ability to reach out as well when you're struggling? When you're really struggling, you're receiving them messages, you're all right, mate, and someone's checking in. How do we change that narrative? Like you said, change that belief, that mindset around. How do we change that to get people, to encourage people to answer honestly and reach out? How do we encourage that more?
I honestly believe that you are doing it right now. Through sharing stories, we see that it's possible for people to make different choices, have different paths after having experienced things. I experienced a lot of racism in my childhood. Bricks through the window, graffiti on the wall. I was in India when Indira Gandhi got assassinated, and as a child I internalized that it's not safe as a woman when you speak up too much because people will take you out. In her case, literally, someone from her own government took her out. I've experienced things in relationships that were deeply, deeply unpleasant. And so by all of us sharing what we feel comfortable with sharing, it gives people hope that, oh, they didn't know which career path, but they found a way to be of service to the world. Oh, they were homeless, but actually now they've set up a charity and they help other people. So it's the more that we can share stories, we're showing pathways of what could be possible.
I love that. And there's so much, isn't it? I guess I'm trying to think of people listening, and someone is struggling. When someone's listening now, and they're in that place where they're struggling, and they go, because when we are not in a good place, we isolate ourselves. We don't want to, there's them narratives that I know are still played over in my mind. You don't want to be a burden. Don't want to reach out to someone and give someone else my problems. These are my problems, so I've got to deal with them. What message do we give to those people if there's someone listening and they are struggling? And what message do we want them to land right now? I guess, like you said, that maybe back to your cousin that tragically died of something that for him to hear. I know that Ben West has done the Reasons to Stay thing, which is phenomenal. What an incredible inspiration he is. But I guess, what would you want people to hear?
That up until that point of questioning, they've had 100% survival rate. They may have gone through relationship breakdowns. They may have been involved in accidents, and they still survived. And so if they look back at all of the things that they have overcome, those experiences, those moments, they were temporary. And so even though in that moment you might feel that the situation can't change, look back and notice everything that has changed.
Yeah. And there's that famous, what comes up for me when you say that, and it's hard to sometimes think this when you're in those moments, and I know, because I've felt it, but that those words, and this too shall pass, is all something I guess I echo so much, and I try, and for myself, right, I try and remind myself of those things, that And I think taken from what you've just said is exactly that, right? You look at all them things that you've got through, it passed. And it relates to when good things are happening as well. I'm having a great time. This will pass.
This incredible concert or this incredible party, it's
it will
gonna
pass. So I think I guess that's the message, and it's just trying to get that across to people, get that, because this is where I guess the amount of awareness there is now around it, and you shared them statistics at 2024 was it's not, and you go, we've got all of this, we've got more awareness, there's so many more people doing amazing work in this space, and yet the statistics are still going up and they're still high, and you go, what needs to change? Something's drastically got to change. And I guess this, just back to my whole thing around, is it these conversations, these stories, these things that we need to give the skills to kids that are young? And this is where it starts, isn't it? It's got to start, surely it's got to start there for the next generation of kids coming through, kids of my age group, like my twins at 10 and 11, that next generation, giving them those skills, is this where the real change starts to happen?
So I remember hearing Rose say to me recently, Hema's like the Carol Vorderman of suicide. So I'm just going to throw some more stats. And I know I shared one stat in a previous conversation. So 62% of men who've died from suicide, it could be linked to financial issues or difficulties. In the Kent and Medway study, 33% of people who died from suicide were either a victim, a perpetrator of domestic abuse, or someone who'd grown up where domestic abuse was present. I know Ian Wright has famously talked about being a child in a home where domestic abuse was present, and how he has, as an adult, had to process the impact that had had on him. And the other statistic that I want to share is that it's thought, I personally think the figure is higher, that around 30% could be linked to side effects from antidepressant use. Suicide is a known side effect for antidepressant use. Other side effects include headaches, nausea, diabetes, other kind of conditions as well. And my question is, I think the latest figures are 1 in 5 adults in the UK is now taking an antidepressant. How many of those adults were informed that suicide is a known side effect of antidepressant use? Another side effect I forgot to mention is sexual dysfunction. So if we think about the numbers, okay, we know, especially in terms of male suicide, that finances play a big part. That either being a victim, a perpetrator, or growing up in a home where domestic abuse was present plays a big part. Antidepressant use plays a part. And also child sex abuse. When people experience that, fundamentally, the message that is internalized is, I am not safe. I'm not safe. I'm not important. I'm not worthy or deserving. Because if I was worthy or deserving, they wouldn't have done this to me. If I was important, they wouldn't have done this to me. If I was safe, this wouldn't be happening. I can't trust people. And so if we think about, because there's not exact figures on this, because not everyone discloses childhood sex abuse, or they may have only disclosed it to a therapist. And so if we think about how men especially may not admit to having experienced that, may not receive support for that. So if we take all of those things into account, plus the side effect of sexual dysfunction from antidepressant use. So it's already, I'm not feeling great about myself. My finances might not be great. This is what I witnessed growing up, so therefore I don't really have much hope for the future. Plus it's having an effect on me physically as well. And then the added thing is when people come off antidepressants, if they don't come off in a very specific tapered way, that massively increases the risk of dying from suicide. And so I myself experienced suicidal thoughts in 2011, and I'd made a plan and I was about to carry out that plan, except I got interrupted. And it was only, I think, last year that I joined the dots of, hang on a minute, that was the same year that I'd been prescribed antidepressants. At the time, I just thought it was me that, okay, I'd reached the age of 36 and all my friends were married and had kids, and the friends that weren't married or had kids, they had big careers. And so it's that thing of like, you either have a family or you have a big career or you have both. And there was me thinking, well, I've got none of the above. And thinking, well, what's the point of me? Like, what's the point of my existence? You know, and it's only recently that I realized, no, actually, it was when I came off antidepressants. That's when I started looking at the fine print in my mortgage documents to make sure that if I did do anything, that no one else would be impacted. And so I think we need to, as a society, be really honest about the harms of medication. Because I think that's one area, I don't think it was covered in the British Standard on Suicide Prevention. I haven't read it all, but I know lots of really good things were covered in that standard, but I'm not sure if side effect from antidepressant use was covered. So that's one area. And the other thing that I only realised in the last couple of weeks, that when I was suicidal as a teenager, that's when I had been prescribed antibiotics for a very long time for a skin condition. And science is now showing that when you have antibiotic use, it affects your gut microbiomes. And when that is affected, that can then affect your mood. I'm like, isn't that amazing that it's taken me until the age of 50 to realize that the 2 times in my life that I was suicidal, they were both related to the pharmaceutical industry.
There's so much there, blimey. There's so many. Well, thank you for sharing your story as well. And I guess that, God, there's so much there. What you mentioned there about, there's so many things I want to unpick there, but you mentioned there about like men and finances and that narrative, and again back to your stories, it's part of the problem that we go, there's a blueprint for what life should look like, and when we don't measure up to what the blueprint is, that's when we start to feel worthless and useless. How does that narrative start to change? 'Cause I resonate so much because mine was similar in the sense that I had the family and I had the other things, but my narrative of what I felt was successful, I wasn't, like from a career point of view and as a business person. So that's when I went to, and I had suicidal ideation. But so it's again the narrative of going, I should be here by now and I'm not. And I know I'll keep circling back. I'll keep circling back to kids, and I'll keep circling back to schools, and I'll keep circling back to education. And the fact that we are programmed from a young age to believe that this is what we should do. So like you said, we're going to do well in a test, and then we're going to go to college or university, or we're going to do well in this and be successful at that, because that will give us a job, and then you'll get a mortgage and a house, and this whole societal thing, rather than leading back to the, what do I love doing, what fills me up, what makes me happy, what gives me purpose, and just being enough, recognising them from that young age that we're enough. That has got to be, if that has got to be where that narrative, because I'm listening to you talk and I'm listening to them statistics, and I'm thinking of my own story and my own narrative and the conversations I've had on here, and it keeps just bringing me back to that point. And it's got to be that, isn't it?
And again, the gap is getting wider, because yes, we've been conditioned and programmed to believe that you're only successful if you've got a certain number of zeros in your bank account. And that, you own a house and you've got a car and you've got this and you can go on this many holidays a year and all of that. And what we're seeing in social media is so many people under the age of 30 going, and this is how I made my first million, and this is how I make 10K a month. And so you see all of that and you think, wow, I'm a real failure because I'm not like earning 10K a month and I haven't made $1 million by the age of 27. And so there's that, it goes back to that unequal distribution of wealth. And also I was watching I think it was on LinkedIn, possibly either earlier today or yesterday. And there was an investigative journalist who was looking at children being taken into gangs along the lines, of county lines. And they set up a social media account and they started looking at content on TikTok about money and young people making money and wealth. And within days, they were receiving messages from strangers about, if you want to make a bit of extra cash, I've got something for you. And so our generation was programmed through television. The younger generations are programmed through a device that they hold in their hand that can really get to know them very, very quickly and show them targeted things. There was reports out that when girls had searched content about beauty and body shape and weight loss, within a short amount of time, girls of a very young age, between the ages of 12 and 15, were shown weight loss drug adverts and things like that. So it's the bigger systems are preying on what we're worried about. They're profiting from what we're worried about to our detriment.
I'm keen, if we go back to 2011 when you mentioned but what helped you, or what helped you to get through that period, and what changed for you in your mindset?
I remember that I was prescribed antidepressants. I don't recall being told about any side effects. And at that time, I wasn't on the path that I am on now, so I didn't have the knowledge that I have now. And I think the doctor mentioned counselling, and then someone else I knew said, they'll keep you on a waiting list for weeks and weeks and weeks. And the only way to get further up the waiting list is if you're suicidal. And I didn't tell the person at the time, but I was like, I actually am suicidal. And so I was able to receive some counselling. And although it didn't address anything at a fundamental or deep level, and I found some of the sessions quite frustrating because I didn't feel like I was making any progress. But one thing that the counsellor said was, really dial back into your childhood hobbies and interests. She goes, what are your hobbies? And I was like, I don't have any hobbies. I go to work, I come home, I eat dinner, I sleep, and then I get up and do it all again. I was like, hobbies? What does she mean by hobbies? And so I really had to go home and reflect on like, hobbies, what does that even mean? What did I used to enjoy as a child? And the things that I enjoyed as a child were, singing, acting, dancing, all of that stuff. And so then that kind of sparked a bit of a light bulb moment. And I thought, are there any choirs in my local area? Are there any dance lessons? And so then I found a choir, and I walked into the rehearsal, and someone said to me, "Oh, are you the guest singer for this session?" Because they hadn't seen me before. And I was like, "No, I'm just coming along for a trial." And within that choir, I found a sense of community. I found friends that were not just my work friends or my partner. And so it helped me get to know people of different backgrounds, different ages. And it was a rhythm. Every Saturday morning, that's what I did. And so it gave me connection. So if we think back to the ABC, alone with the belief that a situation can't change, it stopped me being alone. And then as I got to know people that weren't from my workplace, I got to see and hear about things that they were doing, things that they were involved in, that they were interested in. And it just opened my mind to what was possible. Oh, right, our choir does shows. Oh, we could do a show at St. George's Hall. Huh. And suddenly my world went from being very small with kind of no way out to just seeing little shoots of possibilities. And then on the dancing front, I'm not going to be invited on to Strictly anytime soon, although I would love to be. So if anyone's listening, but I joined an Argentine tango dance class, and it was nearly all women, so I did have to partner with a woman, but it was just like I got to learn a dance that I'd seen on Strictly. So it was little things like that my career hadn't changed, my relationship hadn't changed, but I just had these little glimmers of hope that there were possibilities out there, that my life didn't have to look the same way as it does right now.
Thank you so much for sharing that, because that is for me, such a powerful message for people. Because there was something I shared in one of my journals recently, which was about, there's a guy called Luke Bateman who I follow, who does a lot of work in this space, and he's amazing. And the word that I'm taking from what you've said there about possibility, and he mentioned, like, if someone's in that situation, the choice they make is to die by suicide, that the possibilities end, right? That's it. Whereas if you choose the possibilities are abundant. If you choose the other path, you choose life, the possibilities are abundant. And it's just then, when you look at it like that, in that black and white, and you go, right, okay, it's like that. So if I choose to end it, there's no possibility. If I just look for a possibility, whatever that looks like, and like you said, for you, it's just making that choice to go, right, what can I find something that, and you mentioned about just doing community and getting involved in something. But I know Paul Dukes, who runs Out of Puff Daddies, he mentions that, lovely, amazing guys, but so much of the work they do around mental health, and he meant something that's really landed with me since our conversation was seeking joy. It just goes like out of Puff Daddy. We laugh and we joke. Of course, there's a deeper meaning under all of it, and we know everyone's got their backs. But ultimately, we're just a group of dads going and having a laugh and dancing around, and it's just seeking a couple of things there: connection, community, the words you've mentioned, and just seeking that little bit of joy. Because that, even if you're not feeling great and you just show up, then there's that little glimmer of possibility. And I think that message, what you've just said again, why I feel like these stories, sharing people, surely giving a platform for people to share them, because someone listening, maybe, it just gives them that little bit of hope. Where can I look for that possibility? And I think that's something thank you so much for sharing that. Thank you.
And for me, when I was a teenager, house music saved my life.
Really?
I would not be here had it not been for house music. Because as a teenager, when I was feeling suicidal, when I went to nightclubs, I was underage, but as a girl, I could just wear makeup and high heels and get in anywhere. Being on the dance floor, that was my sanctuary. That was where I could forget all about my woes, my troubles, and I could just be. Except I wasn't just being by myself. I was being in a whole, like almost a congregation of other people enjoying the same music, enjoying the same rhythms and same beats. And now they're saying, like, again, science is catching up about how the beats and the rhythm of house music is really, really conducive to bringing about feelings of joy. And so I am clean, sober, and to me, I don't need to drink anything or take anything to enjoy music, because the music makes me high. So I experience that natural ecstasy when I'm on a dance floor. So yes, and then I'm looking up at that picture which says Chicago. When I went to Chicago and went to literally the birthplace of house music, I just started crying. And the person I was with was like, what's going on here? Like, we're just outside the warehouse. Like, what? I was like, I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for house.
Wow. And I'm keen, like, just again, like with you mentioned obviously into 2011 that sort of what led you to that, but what about in your teenage years? What you said again, like obviously house music saved you, but what led you to those feelings of suicide?
There was a few things that happened in childhood, like experiencing racism, like coming home from school and seeing that there's graffiti on your wall, and then actually being in a room when a brick goes through the window and the glass just shattering everywhere, and realizing that you are not safe even in your own home. And also for me, I was brought up primarily by my grandparents. And then my mum got married, had my sister, and then my grandparents decided to go to India to retire. And so as an adult, I know that they were just living their best life, going to warmer climates to retire. But as a child, I was like, they were my world. And they were going and they were leaving me with my mum and my stepdad and my sister. And it's like they were leaving me. So I felt a huge sense of abandonment. And that was a big thing for me, in that I stopped trusting other people and I stopped trusting myself, and I abandoned myself. So I either abandoned myself on the dance floor, but in later relationships, I had a pattern of choosing people who were untrustworthy, so mirroring back that lack of trust. And I had a pattern of abandoning my own goals and my own dreams and my own ambitions and focusing on whoever I was in a relationship with. So lucky for whoever I was in a relationship with, because they always got promotions and they got this and they got that. But I kept abandoning myself. And so in this period of life now, it's been a whole journey to get to the point of, yes, I don't fear being judged, trolled, or misunderstood. I am making my purpose bigger than my fears, and I'm no longer abandoning myself.
Wow. That's so beautiful. It's lovely to hear as well. And I guess like one of the things for me, again, I've used the word quite a lot when I spoke to Rose as well, is that word hope, right? Like, you listen to, I'm so grateful for you being so open and sharing on both occasions, right? What's led you to that, and because some people listening may resonate, some people may have, well, that's where I am at the moment, or that's what's making me feel a little bit like that, and certainly feelings of abandonment, I'm sure people can resonate. But to then hear you sitting here with, and the path and the journey that you've gone on, and I'm aware that it's an ongoing journey with all of us, right? Like, I wonder if we ever get to a point of, oh, I'm absolutely fine now, I've got all this figured out, and I know, like, certainly sharing my journey, I feel like I'm just at the start of it for me, right? We're just figuring all this out, but to see you there, and like I said, I've followed you for some time now as well, and like the stuff that you put out, and you can tell that you're just what you believe and how you come across, and it's just amazing. And yeah, thank you. I guess thank you. There's a couple of bits as well I want to touch on, just if we can, just to focus on. You mentioned about statistics, and we know, like, the statistics around male suicide are 75% of all suicides are male. I'm just trying to unpick, I guess, some of the reason in behind, and I'm wondering, I made a couple of notes here around, like, that men learn from an early age that, like, being emotionally visible is not safe, is dangerous. Do you think that's something like the narrative again from society that's what it tells men?
It's that whole thing of boys don't cry.
Yeah.
Man up and, don't show emotion. And so it's about suppressing emotion. But the thing is, it's like whatever we suppress and don't express gets stuck in different parts of our body. And so when we don't process trauma, when we have emotions that haven't been expressed or witnessed or completed, then they stay stored in our body until we release them. And so we think, okay, I've got pains here, or I've got pains there. And I delivered a talk on the hidden meaning of pain in different parts of the body. It's about being able to name the feeling, express it in a safe way, and for it to be seen and heard. And one of the things that we as a society aren't great with is anger. And we've labeled anger as something as bad. And actually, if we think about what is anger fundamentally is like we feel that our boundaries have been crossed. That's when we blow up. That's like that fuse moment, that red mist is, someone has said or done something and it's like, they shouldn't have done that. But yet we're told, oh, you shouldn't get angry. You need to be neutral. You need to, the current buzzword, you need to regulate your emotions. And then when we think about, what is the dictionary definition of the word regulate, is to rule. And so it's about control. It's about, you need to control your emotions. And why do we need to control our emotions? Is it because we need to control our emotions to make other people feel comfortable? And so again, we're given these messages that your big feelings aren't welcome. And rage is helpful. Rage helps us reconnect to our boundaries and say, yep, that was not acceptable.
Because there's something in that, like, really, like, when we talk about emotions, I think it's almost like we've got two lists, right? We've got the negative emotions and the positive emotions. And actually, we've got to be happy and you feel joy, and these are the things that we focus on. But we can't feel angry or sad or you know, other negative emotions. That the second that you associate that, what I've been trying to say to the kids is actually all emotions are welcome. Certain behaviours associated with those emotions are not necessarily okay, but the emotion's welcome. And I think that's, again, I think, yeah, listening to you talk and how you've articulated, I think that's the missing piece within the emotional literacy skill set that we need to teach, is that the wide breadth of emotions are all welcome, and understanding them and processing them, not controlling them.
You've hit the nail on the head. Yes, it's okay to be angry. No, it's not okay to punch someone because you're angry. And I can't remember the number of seconds, but is it something, and you may be able to share this, is it something that an emotion only lasts like 9 seconds or something?
Yeah.
And so then everything after that is a choice based on the emotion. And so, yeah.
So, and again, that's back to the thing. Imagine if we're taught that at a young age. We're taught these are all the emotions, and these are ways to process them. And I think that's the thing. Because back to the word that come up that you mentioned was suppression. And I think that, again, maybe more so, and I'm keen to get your take on this, men and young boys tend to suppress more than they do. Young girls, women are naturally better at understanding them and able to talk, and they do naturally talk. Someone mentioned to me on the podcast a while back about that, is it as something as just one example of it, that when young girls have their periods, they show vulnerability straight away. They will go to their friends and go, on my period, says something vulnerable that they're able to share and articulate, and they bond then, and there's connection based on vulnerability. Whereas boys are the complete opposite to that. Anything happening physically, hormones or whatever, just we can't talk about that. It becomes banter, and we block that out. So we, from that young age, from 10, 11, 12, whenever we start through puberty, we automatically suppress emotion. And I think that suppression, I wonder how we change that narrative for men and young boys, that we've got to be able to express and share emotions and talk about them more. Because I know that I remember when I'd done some conscious connected breath work, and I, for someone who, I speak on here really openly about emotions, I've started going almost at the start. I'd like to think I was really into, but it wasn't until I'd done that really unlocked. Like, I sobbed for an hour, but what come from that was me journaling, like nearly a book's worth of stuff of emotions I just suppress. And this is someone who I think I'm quite advanced in this. I talk about it a lot. I'm doing the work, and I realised how many years, I'm 47, and it's only last year that I feel like I've started to maybe release some of that. And I'm thinking, then how many other men, maybe not as far down the journey as where I am, are just all they're doing is suppressing for so long. And how do we create safer environments for men to open up about that?
And yes, women generally do talk more, and women are more receptive to talking-based therapies. And it's not necessarily about encouraging men to do the same as women. And it's about encouraging men to find their own way, their own outlets. A couple of things. I saw something about Indigenous wisdom and Indigenous tribes, And they were saying one of the things that is fundamentally missing in Western societies is that there's no clear initiation process going from being a boy to a man. And so lots of indigenous tribes would have certain ceremonies or certain rituals that would, be witnessed within community and saying, these are the new responsibilities and this is what's about being left behind and we're here to support you and this is your tribe of men and this is, and it's, so it's that sense of identity, shifting that identity from boy to man. And doing that in community in a really positive, supportive way. Then also there's the thing, and I don't know why this popped into my head, but I see so many adverts for things like deodorant. And so immediately antiperspirant deodorant, and it's like saying, your body is not welcome here. Your body is giving off a smell that is not welcome here. But what is it? Because there's sweat that smells and sweat that doesn't. And sweat that smells is a sign of somebody in stress. So actually all that we're doing when we're encouraging people of all ages to wear antiperspirants and deodorants, we're actually numbing the indicator of what stress is. And so those products themselves contain so many endocrine disruptors that affect people's hormones. So actually we're pushing chemicals into bodies, whether it's a teenage girl or boy or any young person, that is actually going to be worse for them. By making, rather than thinking, okay, the sweat is smelly, so what stress are you under? Okay, is it an exam that's stressing you out? Is it the fact that you didn't get picked for the team? Or is it because there's this, thing coming up or, And so all of these things are actually making us bypass the conversation about the thing that's actually worrying them.
I never even thought of it like that. And it's interesting you say about the indigenous cultures. I remember there's a guy I know really well, John Richards. I've listened to a few of his things that he's put out, and I went to one of his talks actually, and he said something very similar in the sense that there is this ritual around what it means to become a man. And I think I don't know if you've seen the Manosphere documentary that Louis Theroux had done, but that question about what does it actually mean to be a man these days, and I think the lack of maybe strong male role models, and if you take it back to those indigenous cultures, it was a clear thing of what it meant to be a man, and we've maybe lost that, and the role models that are out there at the moment, and it's very much around dominance, and which is I've done a whole episode, a solo episode on my own about why it's so wrong. What for me, what we should be teaching is raising emotionally aware, emotionally healthy young men. That for me, again, it all links in for me. Just everything I'm trying to do is all linking back into the mission. And one of us choose male suicide, and a key element of that is raising emotionally healthy boys. And this bit goes back to a little bit about what you're saying there, right?
And not being afraid to say that actually it's okay for the man to be a provider, and maybe we need to just add a little nuance to that definition, and being a provider of safety.
Yeah.
Calling out other people who are making other people unsafe. And so imagine if every man, because yes, more women and partners are getting different jobs, and so maybe there is a different need for financial provision. But imagine if every man was like, yes, I'm going to provide safety, whatever safety looks like. And that could be emotional safety, it could be physical safety. Because if we think about the statistic of a third of the people in the Kent and Medway study who died from suicide were either victims of domestic abuse or perpetrators of domestic abuse, or children who'd grown up in homes where domestic abuse was present. Imagine if there had been people around them in that community, in that ecosystem, who had provided safety and prevented that experience, or prevented the witnessing of that experience. And so there is a role for men. Maybe that role just needs to be defined.
I think that's it. I think that's something really key. What is, and I've asked lots of people who have come on, like, what does it mean then to be a man these days? Because there's so many different narratives out there, and maybe it is as simple as that. Maybe it is as simple as just like, because you can still for me, by being emotionally aware doesn't mean that you know, again, narratives around vulnerability and crying would be weakness, and which has real strength. Right? Like that narrative is real strength, to be emotionally aware. And you can be, some people will go, "Oh, it's a man's man who stand like." What does that mean then? But actually, maybe being a real man is someone that can provide safety
for all.
For all, yeah, exactly, yeah. But yeah. God, it's so much that we unpack. As we're coming, there's so many other things I still want to touch on, and we're coming towards the end with a couple of closing questions. But there was some things I wanted to share just around the message as well that you put out there, and how, like, when you what we talked about earlier, a bit about purpose and finding that when it becomes bigger than fear. Like I said, certainly, I guess very much from where I'm coming from at the moment, I feel like this purpose that I'm being pulled there. But I guess what advice would you give someone who's maybe a bit scared of sharing their message, and where they're feeling a bit stuck in themselves, they want to put it out there but feeling a little bit terrified, I guess, to put something out? What advice could you give someone around that?
Make it about who you serve. Because so often the reason that we worry about showing up and speaking up is we think, what will the comeback be on me? And as you're doing with this podcast, is like, what could be the impact on the person hearing your voice? So when we make it about who we serve, it becomes so much easier to say what needs to be said.
I love that. And I guess when it becomes then about the purpose, right, and about the audience and about the people, it's not about, we let go, I guess, of, I don't know if ego's the right word, maybe, don't know, maybe it is. We let go, like, when we focus more on if it's about us and I've got to get this right, or I'm going to do it, when it doesn't become about us, it becomes about a bigger purpose. And I feel like, I guess I'm speaking on my own journey, I feel like I've done more stuff to camera, more posts and more things about the message, because what I share in today, is that going to impact something? Can it maybe help one person? Then I'm going to put it out there and I'm going to keep sharing. I feel like I've found my voice, I guess, And yet I'm still battling with it internally, like still battling with that thing, because I've had a couple of negative comments recently, and you go, and I reacted to that in a way that I'll take that down then, and I shouldn't say that, rather than have that confidence in myself that I'm not gonna. I guess how have you been able to let go of that feeling of going, I'm not gonna please everyone, I'm gonna. I guess it circles back. I know we touched on it at the beginning, but just coming full circle, I guess, back to that feeling.
Yeah, being able to sit with the discomfort of like, I didn't please that person. They're angry and annoyed at me. And as you said, we're not going to please all of the people all of the time. And it's about really looking at ourselves and thinking, what was my intention?
Yeah.
Did my intention come from a good place? Did my intention come from a place of do no harm? Is my conscience clear that I was doing it with a good intention? And can I recognize that I am a human being, and human beings make mistakes? And so therefore there may have been a gap between my intention and the impact. And also, can I allow for the possibility that my intention was good, I thought the impact was good, maybe how that person interpreted it may not have been in alignment with how I intended it.
I wish I'd messaged you after that. Because that is exactly it. And I will just share the quick example of what I basically, it was the thing around the manosphere, and I shared that so much of my take from the manosphere, and I used an example from Luke Bateman, who I reference quite a lot, but it was actually the manosphere is just a bit of a Ponzi scheme, selling quick fixes, right? Get rich quick schemes. That's what underlie the whole. They're using like this dominance and this archaic, or this really, I guess awful narrative around what it means to be a man, and they're being controversial around it to get people to buy into them, because maybe some young boys are feeling lost. They want something to follow, so they're following it. So the underlying tone, and he said, look, it's basically a sign of society. Sometimes we want quick fixes, and that's where we are. And he did something like maybe a fat loss pill or along those lines. Like we look for that in society, and I used that as an example. And a friend of mine who I've known for years, she reached out and was like, hadn't commented on any of my stuff or sent me any messages for years, but chose this moment to go, well, some of your friends are on that, including me, and believe me, it's not a quick, easy way out, and was offended by it, which I understood, and I said, okay, well, I didn't mean to offend. I understand that message maybe didn't land me. The actual underlying message of the whole thing is around trying to reduce male suicide, and my take on the manosphere and how that could have impacted, not really to do with fat loss. It was just a small example, okay? But after I let it land, I thought, well, she hasn't contacted me. I've shared all this content. She hasn't contacted me. She's chose this moment to contact me and criticise me. And then I shared another thing afterwards, not mentioning any names, but I just then mentioned, why is it that within society we're really quick to criticise someone and not to, like, I've shared all this content and someone didn't comment on that, but she did. And then one of my best friends, which is her partner, commented and said, take that down, that's really out of order, you did. And I was like, part of me, I got really upset actually, I got really emotional. I hadn't spoke to either of them, but I just took it down straight away. The people pleasing side, I just took it down. I was like, okay, I'll take it down. I don't want any of that. It's missing the message. For me, the message is I'm trying to reframe success because I want to reduce male suicide, and this is the impact I'm having. There's these underlying tones, and there's some controversy around this and some negativity that I don't want any part of. Don't want people talking about it, so I just took it down, and And if I just part of listening to I know I've gone around the house a bit, but listening to what you just said landed so much. I'm thinking, maybe it is that it come from a place, 100%. Both of those posts separately come from a good place of intention. The point about the criticism was just going, are we in society? Can we? My message was on the back of that was, if you see someone that's doing something good, take an opportunity now to reach out and tell them, I see you and you're doing something good. I'm proud of you. Tell them you love them. Say something kind. Come from a place of kindness and see that. Don't wait for someone to say something that may be a bit thingy and you're going to criticise them. That was my underlying tone of that. And the previous one was obviously around the manosphere. I was just like, maybe what I've shared is just not landed with that person. Like, as you just alluded to, that I can sleep at night because it's come from a place of good intention. It's not had the desired impact on that person, but maybe it has on a lot of others, and I can be at peace with that, I guess. That's really helped me, because where I struggled with it was rather than I felt like I'd come a long way in my journey, and that took me right back. I felt like I just went back to people pleasing again, and I just went back to, I don't want that. I don't feel strong enough in my voice to go, actually, I'm really sorry that's not landed, but this is what I believe and this is why I've done it. I took it down and just didn't contact them anymore. And that's probably what I'm sitting with the most at the moment, that uncomfortable feeling of, I thought I was further along than I am, and I'm not. Anyway.
We are all works in progress. We're all on a journey.
Yeah.
I think one of the really good takeaways from like the behavior management training that I received when I was a secondary school teacher was praise in public and give other feedback in private. So they had an opportunity to DM you as opposed to comment on the post.
No, they did DM me. That's fair,
okay.
fair enough. Yeah,
okay,
they did.
Cool.
Sorry, yeah. They did message me privately.
Cool.
Yeah, so that's cool. Yeah.
The other thing is remembering that we are all wounded human beings. I don't know if you've seen that sculpture. I don't even know where it's from. There's a big steel sculpture with two people with their backs towards each other, and then underneath that sculpture is two little children. Have you seen that? I'll see if I can find it and send it to you. It's remembering that we are all wounded. And so sometimes when we speak, someone is hearing it through the lens of their wounding. And so yes, in society, we have been programmed and conditioned to look for a quick fix and magic pill. And yes, there are lots of pills for which we do not know the side effects. And so it's perfectly valid to say, yes, we've been conditioned to look for quick solutions. And also, we don't know that person's wounding of what the issue of weight and fat means to them. And so then it's just hit a nerve in them that they felt the need to comment. And so when we realise that in any relationship, it's just one wounded human talking to another wounded human, and our wounds are talking to each other, then we can start to understand why we can have these misunderstandings. And then also leaving room for the fact that there will always be some people who are committed to misunderstanding you. So then can be the occasional misunderstanding, and then there's people who, like, no matter what you say and do, they will just always,
Love that. Thank you. We're coming towards at the end, and before we do our closing tradition, I'm really keen. What do you hope people feel after listening to this conversation?
That change is possible. And I'm going to echo what you said, that whatever you're feeling right now is temporary, whether it be joy and ecstasy or pain and crisis. And fundamentally, as human beings, we have 5 needs. to feel that we're good enough, to feel that we belong and can connect, to feel that things are possible, that we are worthy and deserving, and that our future can be different to the past. And so if we can all help ourselves and help each other, remember that the future can be different to the past. And just open the door to possibility. Leave that door ajar and invite people to step into it.
Wow. I love that. I love that. We spend so much time often in the past, don't we? Those past narratives. I'll take me back to something that you mentioned right at the very start around presence. You mentioned the word presence there, which has come out as one of the 5 pillars for me of success, and probably the one that I struggle with the most. Because we live so much in the past, and we do often, we want to have the belief and the possibility of what that door open, leaving that door ajar is open, but the importance of living in the now. And how, for you, how do you stay present? What do you do to stay present?
When I realised that anxiety is the fear of something that hasn't happened yet. So it's in the future. And that depression is ruminating over the past. And that as human beings, we're either replaying the past or pre-playing the future. And actually everything happens in the present. So if we're in the past or the future, we're not facilitating change because we're somewhere else. And the reason so many of us struggle with not being present is when we've had terrible things happen to us, we disconnect from our bodies, we disassociate. Something painful is happening, so therefore I will go somewhere else. And then we've never learnt to bring ourselves back and reconnect and reassociate. And so the more work that we do on healing, presence is really linked to the trust wound. Trusting in your own choices, decisions and actions, trusting in your voice, message and truth, trusting in others, and trusting in universe, God, source, faith. When we're able to trust, goes back to my definition of anxiety. Anxiety is fear of something that hasn't happened yet. The opposite of anxiety isn't calm, it's trust. Trusting that you'll be okay no matter what. So therefore, you don't need to hang out in the past, learning the lessons from the past and staying there. And you don't need to hang out in the future and thinking about the what ifs and over planning for the what ifs. If you can be fully present, that's where all the power is. And when it comes to speaking, I did a post recently about this, the difference between good speakers and great speakers. It's not preparation. And especially sort of having attended quite a few TED talks, everyone up there has prepared. They wouldn't be there if they hadn't prepared. The difference is presence. Who's really in the room? Who's feeling the energy of the room? Who's responding in the moment, enjoying the moment, being in the moment? And so when we trust that we'll be okay no matter what, we give ourselves the luxury, the privilege, the permission to be present. When we don't trust that we'll be okay no matter what, we're hanging out in one of those other two places.
Wow. And how do we get to that presence? How do we get to that? Because I love that. I've never heard it like in that trust element. How do we get to that point? So again, someone listening, where do you start with that?
So the thing that has worked for me is I received the same modality I deliver to clients. I received it myself as a client on healing the trust wounds. And so my trust wound began when my grandparents left and I felt like I'd been abandoned, so I didn't trust anyone anymore. And then also the trust wound was further wounded through, racist graffiti, bricks through the window, not trusting that I was safe in my physical environment. And so I received RTT hypnotherapy to get to the root cause and reason of my trust wounds so that I was able to process it, talk it through, what I'd experienced, what I'd made it mean, the beliefs that had been formed at that time, how those beliefs were looping like a vinyl record, and then completing it. Because a lot of the time we experience things, but the emotion hasn't been completed or witnessed. It's been pushed down or suppressed. And so being able to get it out and then finding where the trust wound was stored in my body. I can't remember because it was some years back, but I know I had things either stored in my throat or in my heart or in my stomach. And so then when you find out the reason for the wound, where it's stored in your body, and then it's released, then you develop a whole new relationship with trust. And so before, I wouldn't be able to stick at habits. And now, if I say I'm going to only eat between 11 a.m. and 7 p.m. because I want to do intermittent fasting and that's my choice and that's what I want to do. I'm not saying it's right for everyone, but, something that I'd set my mind to, I do it. Whereas before, I'd, do it for a couple of days and then fall off and then do it for another couple of days and then fall off and then decide it was just not worth it. And so in terms of being able to stick to habits, now I trust myself. I make and keep promises to myself. And again, because I'm a human and I'm a work in progress, things that I would have procrastinated for months and years on, I still might procrastinate a little bit, but I'm procrastinating at a much shorter space of time than I would ordinarily. And so it has allowed me to do things and show up in a way that I'd have never been able to show up for myself before. So I actually think the way that my life is progressing now, it's like so much happens in a year now that in a previous version of me, that number of events would have happened over the course of 5, 6, 7, 8 years. Whereas because I trust myself and I know I'm going to be okay no matter what, I may take certain business risks, or I may take, I may do a video about something and show up in a certain way and say something because I know that video, it's like, what did they used to say when we were younger? It's like tomorrow's chip paper, they used to say with newspaper back in the day when chips were wrapped in newspaper.
I remember.
Wow. I'm not sure if I answered your question because I went off on a tangent.
No, but you did it. Again, it's relating to that feeling of presence, right? And like you said, what's worked for you, unlocking that because I'm wondering, like, I'm listening to you and I'm thinking to myself, like, again, where I'm landing back to where I'm with my journey. I know that presence is the thing that I probably struggle with the most, and I'm wondering. I'm listening to some of the work I've started doing on myself. I'm surrounded by love. Right? I'm so blessed. I'm surrounded by people that I could pick the phone up to at any point. Where I battle with at the moment, and what I'm really unpacking as at early stages, is why I don't love myself, and I don't know where that comes from. But listening to you talk, I'm wondering how that is linked so much to my lack of presence because of a wound or whatever it is, like why I can't, and I don't know why that record is going round and round in my head. I'm trying to figure it out, and I don't know is the answer, but I'm listening to that and thinking, I wonder if that's linked, if I unlock that, where that comes from, and release that, I'll be able to be more present, maybe.
And sometimes it can be something that happened in a classroom, in the playground. It doesn't have to be this huge thing. And I think, sometimes we underestimate the impact of those. And going back to that Lego in the plasticine, the imprint, like sometimes it doesn't even matter how big that Lego piece was. It's just the fact that it was there and it's left an imprint.
Yeah, I think, and that's something of revelation as well. Like, because you hear the word trauma, and the immediate thing is, something really bad has got to happen, and it can be from different people, right? But it could be, like you said, something very simple that someone said once that has just landed with you, and you keep replaying that record.
Yeah.
You keep replaying that.
And you don't even know that it's there.
Yeah.
Because consciously, our conscious mind is only responsible for
blown my
5 to
mind,
15. So even if you were to journal until the cows come home, it wouldn't come up because it's not stored in your conscious. It's in the bit, if you think of an iceberg, it's the bit below the water that's holding the subconscious, which is a massive database of like your experiences, memories, feelings, emotions, beliefs. It's all kind of there.
Final question before we do our thing. I wrote this down. If we created a world where people truly felt safe to be seen, heard and supported, how different would society look?
There'd be a lot more acceptance, compassion, grace and forgiveness. And it would be richer. Think of all those voices that don't feel safe to be seen and heard. We're missing out on their wisdom. We're missing out on their stories and their lessons learned.
Hema, thank you so much. We've got a closing tradition.
Okay.
I'll do this first. These are our storytelling cards, okay? So you're gonna choose a card, any card, then pass it back to me, okay? Share a time when vulnerability deepened a relationship.
This is really fascinating that this memory has popped up. And it's actually with Rose.
Wow.
And I had misinterpreted something that was said. And I felt a certain way about it. And I sat with it for days and days. And then I made the decision that our friendship was more important than the thing. And I wanted that connection with her. The connection was more important. So I reached out and I said, I've understood this situation and I felt this way about it. Is that what you meant? And immediately she was like, no, that's not what I meant. What I meant was this. And as soon as she said that, then I was like, oh, right, I've totally just got the wrong end of the stick. And in the past, I've had, to preserve my own safety, to protect myself, I would just cut friendships. I would just let friendships go. And so I easily could have just let that friendship go. And so it took courage to make that call to say, can we have a little chat about this? And Rose was so grateful. She goes, I'm so glad that you brought this to me, because I would have hated that to have gotten in the way of our friendship.
Love that. Love that. What an amazing way to finish. What a lovely story to share. Emma, thank you so much. There was a reason I kept messaging to say, can you come on the podcast? Because I knew what an amazing like I said, I know when we first sort of connected and you come on the radio show, and then, you know, the stuff I'll follow you and I'll listen to you, and I remember us meeting, and then I had an amazing session with you as well, and you just because so much of the stuff you talk about just really lands with me. She's talking to me. And I'm sure there's so many other people that you do. So I'm just so grateful for your time and your wisdom and your voice, that you keep sharing such amazing things, and the difference that you're really making in my life, but in so many people's lives. So thank you for being on here, and thank you for all you keep doing. You're a star.
My absolute pleasure. And I am so grateful for the opportunity to have this conversation, because like you, my intention and my purpose, as well as to help healers rise, is within my lifetime to see the numbers, the global numbers of suicide go down. When my cousin died, 800,000 people a year globally were dying from suicide each year. Now, the number is 700,000. So even though we haven't made inroads in the UK yet, globally, it's happening.
Amazing. Listen, thank you so much. Let's keep on this mission together, eh? Where hopefully together we're going to all make a difference. So thanks again. And as they say, it's a wrap.